They say, I will be a good contribution to society, I will not tell lie, there will be a peace bomb in society. So they do all this pledge. And when they sing, they say, if your eyes see everything as thorn, then the thorn is everywhere. Is your eyes a flower, then you see flowers everywhere. So it's education of the heart also.
And go. If we will not get education, so it's difficult to surviving in the whole life. I providing to my kids a global type of education, and education helping us to become a good person. The education not helping us to killing each other.
Las escuelas se llaman bambú porque de bambú están hechas. Son sismorresistentes y muy baratas de construir. Reciben a niños de la calle y sobre todo niñas en un país donde las familias eligen pagar solo los estudios de los varones. En Nepal, solo el 26% de las mujeres sabe leer y escribir, contra el 62% de los hombres. Las 5 escuelas de bambú educan en inglés y nepalí a 15.000 alumnos.
To become a good person, it's not easy thing, not immediately. So I hope so my kids will become a good person one day and helping more and more helpless people in entire Nepal through education.
I think simplicity is wonderful. Simplicity of mind, simplicity of speech, simplicity of action. Yeah. You see, the mind, intelligence, can be your best friend and your worst enemy.
Mathieu Ricard hoy es objeto de estudio en sí mismo. La Universidad de Wisconsin lo analizó durante meses para detectar su nivel de estrés y para descubrir los efectos biológicos de la meditación en su cerebro. Mientras midieron la felicidad en cientos de voluntarios con un nivel de 0.3, Ricard logró 0.45. Y desde entonces lo llaman así, el hombre más feliz del mundo.
And for instance, meditation on altruistic love, we have shown increase the immune system, diminish the inflammation. So there are definitely benefits to the body to train the mind. The goal is to train the mind, but also there are effects beneficial to the body. Meditation means to cultivate, to transform the mind, to go from mental confusion to awareness, to wisdom, to get rid of the mental poisons. That's the goal of meditation. In the beginning, the mind is like a wild monkey, never stops, always jump, crazy. And slowly, slowly, more calm, more clear, still very, very vivid. It's not dull, but clear, and not swayed by all the thoughts all the time. Becomes like sky, and then you can grow compassion, you can grow altruistic love, focused attention, understanding. So there's a process of gaining stability and clarity.
Now, if we think about it in terms of the prescription that the Buddha gave in the beginning to relieve suffering, relieve personal suffering, there was a very systematic way of training the mind that he outlined. And that form of training is what scientists have started to use as a very specific methodology that we can study. Happiness is relative, absolutely. We don't have a good idea of what really happiness is. It can be described as just contentment or relief from some other form of suffering, ecstasy, sexual sort of excitement. There's There's so many forms of how we describe happiness, but it's a very vague concept. We know so much more about suffering and pain and unhappiness than we do about happiness.
At least in a Buddhist environment, like some, or in an Eastern environment, I think the people are trying, basically, because it's less individualistic society, so there's less space for resentment. It's more based, the villages, the communities are more based on family structure, big families, or cooperation in the village. So there's less space for individualistic people becoming, very powerful, and other individualistic people being jealous and feeling resentment. I think the fact that in the Buddhist culture, there's more this feeling that all sentient beings are equal and that we should cultivate compassion. So it is not passive, but it's just a better, I think, understanding of a less individualistic society. And the second thing, if there is more value to the inner values, the most respected people here are not the rich people. They are the most wise people, the spiritual masters. You don't feel jealous of them. You want to become like them. So therefore, if you see someone very rich, you are jealous because you cannot get that wealth. But if you see a spiritual master, you are inspired, and you get his teaching, and you can become like him. So instead of being jealous, you feel inspired by that person. So it's a different process.
In the more advanced countries, where we now have good long measurements of happiness over time, the whole population do not become happier as they become richer, and the reason is that people are comparing their riches with those of other people.
Lord Richard Layard es economista y lo llaman el zar de la felicidad. Su libro Felicidad, lecciones para una nueva ciencia, logró que el gobierno inglés incluyera la felicidad en las cuestiones de Estado y fue traducido a más de 20 idiomas.
There's been this tremendous change in the political attitude to happiness during the last 10 years. I think it would be true to say that until then, nearly every politician thought that economic growth was the most important possible objective for their country. And they have looked at other measures like happiness as alternative measures to the gross national product, which is very much influenced by the fact that we have not had increases in happiness as people have become richer in Britain nor in the United States.
My thing is, what brings me joy is to take care of 20,000 children with our humanitarian projects, to help 100,000 patients with our clinics. And besides that, I have one pair of shoes.
One?
And another one for inside.
Two.
Two.
Okay, it looks.
I have no house, no land, a small room here, of course, I'm welcome. I have a small hermitage in the mountain, but belongs to the monastery, so I'm free. In Buddhism, the root is altruistic love. The wish that all sentient beings, not only human, but all living beings, find happiness and the cause of happiness. So now, when this benevolence, this altruistic love, not just for the dear one, but for everyone, meets with suffering, then becomes compassion. So it's very deep, because compassion wants to remove the deepest cause of inner suffering.
That sort of ability, empathy, for example, to empathize with someone, or compassion, to express compassion, to cultivate compassion for another person's suffering, those seem to be eliciting areas, activity in areas of the brain that are very widely distributed through the brain. But I think we're starting to realize that the lasting form of happiness is no longer related to oneself, but to ourself in relation to everyone else.
¿Y qué pasa con el mal?
Evil is just the mental toxin, mental poisons, hatred, jealousy, aggression, pride, arrogance. That is the real evil. There's no other evil than grasping to the self and having contempt for others, not having any consideration for the suffering and happiness for others. That's the evil. There's no something outside with hate, nothing like that. Inside, hatred, ultimate evil.
¿A qué le teme?
Ignorance, hatred. I will be very fearful if I think that hatred will come in my mind.